Awesome.
All right, everybody, welcome to the podcast today. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see that I'm not alone. I have my good friend, Alyssa Holbrook here, and she is our special guest for the week, everybody. And Alyssa, say hi.
Hello.
Alyssa and I met through Master Coach certification back in the day, and she has been someone that I've always gravitated toward. She is a high performance coach for real estate investors. And as a master certified coach, she leads clients to expand their mindset, helping them avoid potential setbacks and become more resilient, resourceful, and successful. As if that's not good enough already, Alyssa has 14 years of experience as a real estate agent and broker and 20 years of investing in residential, multifamily, and commercial properties. And this is what makes her so invaluable to her clients. Her commercial investing experience not only includes medical offices, but also retail, ground up development. When you hear people talking on social media about, I have 150 doors, looking at a property with 200 doors, like this is Alyssa. This is what we're talking about. We're talking like really bad A woman, female powerhouse here. And she is going to be all yours for the next little bit here. So, Alyssa, I'm so excited that you're here today. Grateful for you being in my life, just because it's sometimes hard to find women that are so aggressively passionate about their goals while also being so committed to their family life, because also you're a mom. Tell us about how many kids you have and how long you've been a mom.
Yes, I have three kids. My oldest is 11 years old, and they are the joy of my life. In a full year of 2021, my belief for the year that I practiced was that I can be an incredible mom and run a badass business. And that was just like what drove me to make those two compatible. And we're all works in progress, but there is so much belief there at this point that that is not just possible, it's absolutely fabulous, and each of you can have that. So,
Ooh, I have chills. I love it so much because I think so often as women, we really feel like we're choosing between the two.
yeah.
And there's this really amazing psychologist that I work with, Dr. Paul. You wouldn't know him because he was in another mastermind that I did, but he does the coaching mentorship with me where I certify coaches and help them break through trauma and things like this and help them create a business of their own that they own and everything. Anyway, he was sharing with us a story once about how this man came into a speaking event at, I believe it was a Bravenel Hall, which is here in Utah. And he was on a unicycle juggling machetes. Imagine this. And Dr. Paul said, I was sitting in the aisle and he came in on this unicycle juggling machetes. And I was thinking, am I safe here? Should I move? And anyway, the man got up to the front and he said, I want you to notice that in order to go forward on my unicycle, I must get off balance and lean in.
Mm.
And it was such a powerful visualization to me that we think that we always have to be perfectly balanced in our business and our kid life. But when I redefined what that balance was, that getting off balance is actually how we move forward, not only in our business, but in our relationships. It gave me this permission to think about my life as a mom, as a wife, as a business owner in a whole new way. So as I tell you that story, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I'm loving that idea of it's okay to be off balance at certain points, especially if you're in the middle of a launch or if you have a goal that you're working toward that's a short-term goal. I think that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And then you get to have times like I'm going for 10 days with my kids to Hawaii. I might take two client calls for 10 days,
Or
right?
no,
And you
or
get
zero, zero.
or zero, right? I just have a couple people who need me, but
Yeah.
right, but overall, like I get to have expansive space to breathe. And I think it's that vision though, before you're able to believe that off balance is okay, it's even having the overall vision. So when I was working with a coach early on, she was painting the vision for me of being a speaker on stage and having all these handouts printed and having her daughters down
Mm,
handing those out and watching their mom be on stage.
I love
And
that.
I had to become okay with that. And not only okay with that, believe that I was actually doing my daughters a service by
Mm,
being willing to show up, create a business, and build it. And I think as I've lived that in my life, it is inspiring to my daughters. That is what it is, better for them to see me be their mother and be fulfilled. So I'm actually emotionally present and then also be building my business.
So powerful. I remember, well, this is a conversation I just had with my daughter recently. I have an annual event that I do for my paid community, my Beyond the Rank subscribers. Sorry, you guys, the printer is going off. Don't worry. Sean has printed something in the other room. This is real life. But what Mackenzie said to me, we were getting everything ready for our event this year. And she was like, Mom, can I come? Like, could I come and help you and assist? And it was that desire for her to be there because they do want to be in the room with us. And how cool is that? You know, it's even them at a young age. They know the importance of being in the room. We as moms and business owners, if you don't know this already, everyone, the power of getting yourself in the room is the greatest thing that you can do for yourself in your business every time. It's how I met Alyssa. It's how I met Dr. Paul. It's how I've inspired myself to do the things that I've done. And sometimes it's not just what happens in the room, it's what happens in order to get to the room and to fly home from the room, as simple as the conversations that or inspiration that you might have sitting on an airplane by yourself, flying over the Grand Canyon, which recently I just had happen, and having this moment of like, we're doing this. I'm claiming this right now. We're taking this another step up. And those times have to be built in. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, 100%. Some of
So
my greatest insights and I think even like self-concept shifts have happened either when I'm on the trip or when I'm on my way to the trip. For
yeah,
sure.
isn't that so crazy how that happens?
Yeah.
It creates that stillness in your life
Mhm. Mhm.
that God can really speak to us
Yeah.
because we're so busy. And I feel like there's just such a negative connotation to the word busy. Even as I said it, it was like vinegar coming out of my mouth just then.
Mhm.
But when I use the word busy, I'm not using it as like, I'm so busy, I can't hear. I'm intentionally using my time to create certain outcomes and results in my life. And some people would use the word busy to describe that, where I would use intention and intuition to describe that.
Yes. Oh, I love that.
Yeah, so powerful. Okay, so as a real estate investor, you and I off the bat know that we agree on one thing wholeheartedly together, and that is that in order to create wealth, you must leverage debt.
Yes.
And this is something that for me was something that always made sense to me. My dad was a realtor, just like you. And growing up, I watched him build his business over the course of 3 decades and become super, super successful. Side note, off on the side here, everyone, those of you that are network marketers, which is the majority of our audience here, I felt so liberated when my dad came to me after I think I had been in network marketing for 5 years at this point, was wildly successful. And he said, Emily, what it took me 35 years to build in a real estate career, you've done in 5 years in network marketing. And I just remember like thinking, oh my gosh, that is the greatest compliment that anyone could ever give me. And that's what I love so much about network marketing. And that whole space is building my career in that space is what has given us the wealth that has allowed us to now own 5 properties that we Airbnb, rent out, use for ourselves, creating equity, assets, all these things. And so you just never know where life is going to take you. But I think everyone should go somewhere with network marketing and real estate because it's just such an amazing way to make yourself really wealthy. So I am not of the mindset of cutting up credit cards or of getting debt free. And this was a huge, like, if you will, like knocking of heads with my dad, he's been on the podcast before, you guys. And my dad is my hero. And so anything he says, I'm just like drooling over, like, tell me, Dad, teach me, like, tell me all your wisdom. And one of the things that he taught me really young was true wealth is debt freedom. And I've had episodes on the podcast here and on other podcasts that I've done before. I've done it. I've talked all over YouTube. I've made posts on Instagram. And I feel like this was actually my most dangerous thought in becoming a multimillionaire myself, because I see what my dad meant. And I love you, Dad. If you're listening to this episode, you're still my hero and I'll still drool over everything you say. But true wealth is debt freedom is what he believes. And I adapted it for a really long time because it made me feel responsible. It made me feel like I was being smart with my money, and it made me feel safe and secure. But the shift for me was when we decided to move into our dream home, and we took out a home equity line of credit on our current residence to use as the down payment on our dream home so that we could retain that first property and use it as a long-term rental property. And that grew our wealth more than anything that we had done in the last 20 years at that point. And I remember hiding that from my dad because I knew that he would say that was irresponsible, but it was the beginning of the very smart financial decisions we've made. So, Alyssa, I saw your eyebrows kind of raise in excitement when I said that we did that. And I wondered what advice you give to people around that. And we're not here to give financial advice. Please consult your financial advisors or your real estate professionals for these types of things. But Alyssa, tell me what your thoughts are when I share that story.
Yeah, I was especially relating to the idea of the switch because that was one of the biggest thoughts for me in growing my investment portfolio was I had in my mind that the investment would be paid off. And so I had to shift that not from a personal standpoint, but even when I'm putting money into properties and owning the properties, because in order to have the maximum appreciation, the maximum cash flow, you want to spread your money out over more properties rather than just buying one free and clear. And so there was this shift between paying off debt and having no debt is good and that you're a slave to debt even.
Yes.
And shifting to debt is for me. Debt is actually good. Debt is the means whereby I grow my wealth. And that is really how it works. It's a powerful vehicle to create outsized returns and to leverage the impact that you have in whatever capacity you're using it in. And so it's brilliant because the property that you were in probably had a low return on equity. And that's what, meaning the property value that was in the property, almost, I think of it as locked up inside the property.
Me too. Like
The
it's
cash.
a bank account over there.
Yes.
Like this is why everyone needs to own real estate. Like buy a house for heaven's sakes, buy it as young as you can, and then figure out a way to live somewhere else as soon as possible so that someone else can pay that mortgage and it can accumulate equity. And for those of you that don't know what the word equity is, that's what Alyssa is explaining here is equity is how much your house is worth after the mortgage is paid off, essentially.
Yes. Yeah. It's the remainder of the value that you have that's essentially yours. And that happens while the property appreciates. So you might have only put in a little bit of money, but now it's become a lot higher equity.
We used like the first time home buyer loan to get that house. Is it called, like an FHA loan? Yeah.
Yeah.
So we used the FHA loan to get that. And our down payment came from a stock that Sean's grandma had invested in for him 30 years before we did it. Like it was just like this beautiful full circle moment where grandma bought a stock that turned into this beautiful little nest egg that was very small on the terms of down payment. But we were able to use that to get into that home. And then, and sure, could we have waited and let that stock sit there and saved our money for 5 years? Yes. But you know what we would have missed out on? At the time, a 4.25% interest rate, which I know that the pandemic made 4.25% not look very fancy. But in 2010, when we bought our first home, it was like the lowest it had ever been. And so had we waited 5 years, we would have missed out on 5 years of equity. And this is what I really want to drive home for everyone today is, and this is true for your network marketing business. this is true for a coaching business. This is true for real estate. It's really true for relationships, even. What you do now is what gives you wealth 10 years from now, 30 days from now, 5 years from now. And that was advice my dad gave me when we bought that house. He said, get into the highest mortgage you can possibly get into, buy the nicest house you can while making yourself feel a little pinched so that you can stay in it longer so that it will appreciate more.
Oh,
And
interesting.
I just, and then I think we stayed in that house for 9 years before we moved. So,
Wow.
which I think is pretty typical, right? Is that for a first
The
time?
average is the average is 4 years.
4 years. So we stayed a little bit longer then.
Yeah.
Um, but even when we made that move, again, we were able to get our dream house based off of the equity in that home. And
Yes.
then we've been able to have that line of credit just open on that house for
Yeah.
sprinkler systems and roofing needing to be redone. And like, I just love to play with debt. And I don't understand why everyone is so afraid of it. And I think it comes from at age 18. I remember I was about to graduate from high school and I was like, Dad, you need to take me to the bank. I need a credit card and I need to be able to start building my credit. And so then I went away to college with my first credit card. And every single month I was like, we should go shopping. And so every single month I would go and I would treat myself to like a new pair of shoes or a new outfit. And then I would just pay it off in full and then when I got married and we started having a house, I couldn't pay it off in full anymore. So then I had like 10 years of debt of debt on a credit card where I felt so guilty because like you, I had been conditioned to believe debt was bad. Well, certain debt was okay. A mortgage and school was okay, and a car loan was okay. But really, my parents drilled into us that you should buy your cars in cash. And I love my parents. And I think that is the worst advice that anyone could ever give you. Because why? Why? Like the real flex is being able to buy the G Wagon in cash, but being smarter than that. Because why
Yeah.
would you put $200,000 into a car when you could just finance it through the dealership and go buy an Airbnb? Like that
Right.
to me is like, thank goodness I figured out that money drama in my head before I made that mistake. Right.
Yeah.
So, like, what would you say to someone who has been raised with these values that we've been raised to? Like, how do you get out of this belief that money and debt is only good in certain little cabinets, if you will?
Yeah, I think first you just come to neutralize it. Debt exists, and then you start to look at it different ways. Like it's possible for me to use debt to leverage or to create an outcome that I want. So it's almost like a possibility creator. And so you get to decide based on your goals what that is. It might be a G Wagon, like that might be the thing that you want, or it might be something else, and neither is better or worse. Certain things, though, fit under the asset category versus the liability, right? So if we get
Yes.
into that a little bit, it's like a
Get into it so
property,
they understand it because really my current house that I live in is a liability because
right?
I'm living in it and I can't make money off of it. It's acquiring equity so that 20 years from now it's just a little sitting bank account that I can look at and say there's this much money sitting in this house behind this door in a bank somewhere, right? But
Yeah.
it's still a liability because the bank still owns the loan on it. We make payments every single month. And even when it's paid off, it's still a liability because you have to pay taxes on it and
Yeah.
lighting and gas and all those things. But so that people can truly understand what is a liability versus an asset.
Yeah. So a liability is where the money leaves your bank account and it doesn't come back. So if you think about it, every month that you pay the bank, there's a certain amount of that that pays down, right? And that part is building your actual equity. However, you don't ultimately, even if you saved up 50% of your property value, you still wouldn't have money entering your bank account every month. So when you buy an investment property that is an asset rather than your personal home, which is a liability, when you buy an asset, yes, you're still paying the bank and you still have a loan, but then you have someone living in it that covers, if you do it right, that completely covers the mortgage plus some. And when you own an asset, you're actually getting paid in four different ways. So with real estate, you're getting paid on the depreciation of the property that you can write off on your taxes. You can also write off some of the interest. You have the cash flow every single month, and then the property also appreciates. And then in addition, you have the cash flow. So the money that's actually coming into your bank account every month. So there's a lot of ways to measure that return. But again, it's much more than your personal residence. So I love how you did it at the beginning, where you bought a residence that would then become an asset and you moved it from that liability column over into the asset column where now you're making money off of it every month. And so, of course, you can skip that step and just go out and buy an asset, right?
Right. Well, and that's sort of what Grant Cardone teaches. If anyone follows him on social media, I don't know how you feel about him, but some of his stuff, I'm like, that's cool. And some of the stuff I'm like, don't say that. Like, I really dislike how he tells people not to go to college. I think that's the worst advice ever. You may not use your college degree for the exact thing you went to, but education and knowledge is power. And give yourself the gift of going to college and give your kids the gift of that as well. Like, please, everyone go to school. Only an uneducated society is in trouble. I don't ever want to be part of that whole movement. But I do love how he teaches investing with your kids when they're young. And this is something that my dad tried to get his financial advisor to do with us. Age 12, Wendell came over and on a little chart was like, if you invest $50 a month in your bank account every month, by the time you're 50, you'll have $1 million. And I'm like, why did my parents not just do that for me? I said, okay, I'll think about it. And I'm like, why did no one force me to do that? Because like, I'm like, everyone in our family will go to college. We put away money for that every single month. But why did I not do that for myself? And why did I do that for my kids? I just think he's so smart to do that with his kids. And it's never too late. You're never behind. You could always start now. We could always start now. Alyssa would be an amazing person to work with as far as that goes, if you have real estate, things like this. But when you think about this whole idea of just skipping over the step and just going to an investment, that's one of the things that he says. He says the worst thing you could do with your money is to buy a house that you live in. He's like, he thinks you should rent. I just I'm like, no. Now you've taken it too far. I agree with him, like up until a point, and then I'm always like, no, I'm out. But as far as like how it's relevant to this conversation that we're having right here, it makes a lot of sense to me when you understand liabilities versus assets. And this is why I love Airbnb, because if you can find someone to manage the Airbnb for you, which we do, we have a whole team that runs it for us, then it literally covers way more than the mortgage every single month, where just if you had a long-term renter like we do on our other house, right? We have the Airbnb in Memphis. We have our first home that we kept. I'm just such a big fan of never selling real estate. Like I'm just like, just everyone gather it. Just put it in your basket. And I know there are times where it does make sense to offload real estate in certain situations, but anyway, wonder what advice you have for people if they're like, okay, I get it. I see what Alyssa and Emily are saying. Like, I think that this makes sense and I want to make a move. What would be your advice for someone that is just a first time investor and they're making an extra $500 a month in their network marketing company and they're thinking, I don't have enough money to invest? Like, what would you say to that woman?
That's so interesting. So you could start either purchasing your own home that you know will return money to you in the future or now. So like some of my clients are buying a duplex right now and they will live in half of the duplex. They
Yes.
only have to put 3.5% down. So it's like $16,000. It's like
Yes.
$20,000 in our high market.
This is one of my favorite real estate hacks. Everyone listen to Alyssa. The duplex, the fourplex, these things are the best way to get into real estate because you get to enjoy the bounty of homeownership and have your next door neighbor rent it from you and pay for the whole house so that you don't even have a mortgage.
And when I got started, I didn't even know that that was possible. So I rented a place that was $500 a month. And then I bought a townhome that paid me $1,450 minus $950 and some expenses. I think our payment on it was like $800. So we had a little bit of extra money there. And basically it paid for my rent and I lived cheap while I built up that. I also bought in 2010. So it was that same time frame, right? And I just let that over a decade or more, I just let that property become worth more and build up money in its piggy bank. And then, of course, we took some of that money and traveled Asia for a month. Like you get to have fun with it too,
Yeah,
because
that's
it
why.
incentivizes you to doing it.
This is why I bought the G-Wagon, okay? Because I can get too far on the side of reinvest everything and don't enjoy it. And of course, I love to vacation. I love to plan extravagant trips, and I have no problem doing that if the whole family benefits. But when it comes to just Emily having personal enjoyment in something that the rest of the family doesn't enjoy, I had a real block around that. And
Interesting.
when my coach was just like, Emily, this is fine. Like
Yes.
you need daily personal enjoyment too, because you work
Yes.
so hard. And I said, but it's probably going to mean that I can't do an Airbnb this year. And she was like, it's January. We have a long ways to go. I think you'll probably be able to buy another property this year too. Right.
And the
Uh,
mindset behind that is just make more money, right? Like I solve
exactly.
problems by making more money.
Well,
And
you
yeah,
can
go
make
ahead.
as much money as you want, right? Like
So
there's
true.
no limit on how much you can make. Like in my mind, I'm like, okay, I think we're going to do this amount of millions this year. And then I'm like, but what if I'm wrong? What if we could double that?
Yeah.
Like
I
then
love that.
we could buy a couple Airbnb.
Well, I love it because you're starting to get into that thinking where you're thinking exponentially. And when you start becoming that person and thinking that way, the path to go, you might call it 10x. I love that book. 10x is easier
Mhm.
than 2x, right?
Yeah.
It's like the path to become that person really is laid out for you and it is possible. And some of this is just believing that that is possible for you and
Mm.
that debt much of the time debt is the way, whether it's hiring people in your own business so that you free up your time to focus on the most important things,
Yep.
or in real estate, it's putting down a 5% down payment on a home. And the rest of that, if you think about it, is really, quote, someone else's money,
Mhm.
meaning like
The
it's
bank's
other
money and
people.
whatever investors at the bank are putting that
Right.
money up for you.
Yeah. The people
Yeah.
investing. So,
Well, and
so
see, I think most people at this point in the conversation are sure, like, yeah, leverage money from a mortgage, blah, blah. But I don't think we have most people on board when it comes to credit cards. So this is the
okay.
perfect time for us to bring this next layer in, because I am such a huge believer in leveraging credit card debt to create wealth. And I'm very intentional about how I use it. And of course, I've made irresponsible choices with things, but like, that's part of life and we learn. And I made the best decision that I could in the moment that I did.
Yeah.
And one of the choices, and that statement has nothing to do with the statement that I'm about to make. But one of the things that I did last year was I invested $100,000 in Facebook ads to figure out how to use them. And I put it all on credit cards and sat with $100,000 of credit card debt for 6 months to figure out a funnel, to figure out a way to get it to all work and to pay a Facebook ad team for their brilliance and genius that I didn't have to do it. And I remember the entire time just feeling like, okay, we believe in leveraging debt to create wealth, but like this feels really, really risky. And I never wanted to like add it up on paper. And then finally in October of last year, I wrote it all down and I was like, okay, we're going to look at this number and we are going to have complete accountability to it. We have $100,000 on credit cards. We have finally figured out the most bomb funnel system ever. Go us. This was way harder than I thought it was going to be. And when I thought, oh, we just need to figure out Facebook ads, this will be easy, I was so wrong. And I'm so glad I didn't know how hard it was going to be. But like in that moment, that was when I realized that the knowledge I got from that experience, I then turned up the juice and executed the highest month that I've ever had in my career. I mean, what I made in 1 year of my best year in network marketing as a top 15 team, I made in 1 month using what I learned by leveraging $100,000 of credit card debt. So I literally paid it off with the knowledge I had learned and then some. Like,
That's
and
incredible.
then some, right? But it was such a big lesson to me about that. Now, when I went to get my G-Wagon, I told them, I said, So I just paid off $100,000 of credit card debt last week, and I have no idea what that did to my credit. Because I was over my balances, you guys. Like, God bless Amex and have not really having an enforced limit. Like, I was over my limits on my credit cards by like 30,000 on 2 different credit cards, and they just kept letting me charge. And I just kept at least I made more than the minimum payments. I was constantly putting money on it, right? But I was like, I have no idea what my credit looks like. And I feel like I've done something that was like naughty for 6 months, but it worked out because I got the result I wanted. But I was so scared. And I will preface this with, in the past, my credit score has always been between 750 and 790. But I've never been able to break 800. But Sean always was, which irritated me because I did both of us, and we both had the same amount of debt, and we both had our names on our houses and everything. I was like, why is his number bigger? Like, this makes no sense. But for some reason, he was always over 800, and I was always just below, like 780 or like 785, right? Anyway, my credit score, I was like, so yeah, run the score. Tell me if I can have the G-Wagon, and I sat there just being like, uh, and they came in and told me what my credit score was. And I was like, oh my gosh, it was the highest it had ever been. And I won't tell you exactly what it is, but I was like, no, like, leveraging debt and responsibly paying it off in the way I just did made me even more trustworthy in the financial space. And this is why I literally get chills head to toe, because I can't tell you how many women tell me they don't have a credit card. They can't go buy a car if their husband dies tomorrow. If they're in an abusive relationship, they can't go even rent an apartment because you have to have a credit check for that. They can't go out and buy a townhome like you did. They can't. I mean, when we buy our houses, we typically like do it in my name. And Sean will be on there as like an equal title holder, but we use my credit to do it because of my job. And I just think that there is this still in the, day and age that we're recording this podcast, 2024. Women still do not have financial independence. And I want every woman listening to this right now to go out and get a credit card for yourself with your name on it immediately. Yeah. Alyssa, tell me your thoughts on
this. And a bank account in your name that no one else has access to. That was very problematic in my past relationship, and also extremely important that I had financial sovereignty over the things over my business, essentially, that I was creating. That was very important. So even falling into that mindset of like the logic was, well, if we were to get divorced, half of that would be mine or yours anyway. And it doesn't matter whose name is on it, but it does matter whose name is on it, not because you won't get access to it, but because of some other factors like the ones that we're talking about. That for you to have access to and have financial sovereignty and financial empowerment, like, that is so important. And I think this isn't a conversation that we have with men. Like,
no, I never
get a credit card.
Do this. There's never a man where I have to like, you should get a credit card. They just know, like, this is what you do as an adult. You have a credit card, you have a bank account, you have a savings account, and they just take care of their business. But women, some women do not give themselves permission to need that. And the thoughts that create that, I believe, are, I have a husband that would never do anything to me. I have a Christian marriage. We would never get divorced. Nothing bad is ever going to happen. My husband has a great job. I have nothing to worry about. I don't need anything I can't buy in cash. And those beliefs, while beautiful in one side of the coin, are also incredibly, I think, irresponsible on the other side of the coin. And even though you may have a perfect, amazing marriage, if your husband died tomorrow, what would you do?
Yeah.
What would you do? I mean, even with an amazing life insurance policy, which if you don't have that, you need to get that right away. We're like upgrading ours. But if you, even with an amazing life insurance policy, what would you do if your husband, God forbid, died tomorrow? You would
Yeah.
be at a massive disadvantage because your credit score, and I'll let you go into this in just a minute,
Yeah.
but your credit score is the world's way to ask if you are financially trustworthy.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of like when my daughter is trying out for drill, they want to get her grades. They want her third quarter grades to see if she is someone who cares about what she says she's going to do.
Yeah.
You cannot even try out for the drill team unless you have a certain grade point average. Guess what, everyone? Your grade point average as an adult is your credit score. So, Alyssa, you mentioned that there are four things that go in, four lines of credit that are necessary to have a GPA as an adult. What are they?
Yeah. Well, it's just four different lines of credit. So some of those could be your mortgage, your car, a credit card. And I have worked a little bit with credit repair people just in my past days as a real estate agent.
Mhm.
Now I'm a coach that helps people with the strategy of all of these things.
Yeah.
But someone that I was talking with, he was explaining like they need to see multiple credit cards, but you don't have to spend a lot on them. It's
Oh.
that at a certain day, the algorithm pulls the number of your total limit versus how much you have taken out on the credit card. So it's really more about the ratio and then about being used every month. So you could go buy, you can just buy a few things, whatever you said, get your nails done or go buy a glass, a carton of milk or something,
Groceries.
groceries, right? And then just pay it off and that will increase that credit score. But I will also
Even
say for
like,
me,
even
mhm,
like I don't even remember when my credit limit was raised, but
I think you can call the bank.
I talked to so many women who they apply for a credit card in their 30s and they say you can only have 1,000 limit.
Right.
And then you can't ask for it to be raised for 90 days if you have no other history. So this is
Mm,
really key, everybody. If you do not have a credit card right now, go get one because, and then just make little things on it, a tank of gas, then pay it off. You're
mhm,
paying with it in cash. Okay. There are societal beliefs and beliefs from experts that have trained you to think that credit cards are evil and that you shouldn't have them. And it is keeping people poor and not trusting themselves with money. I don't like it because
mhm.
when you trust yourself with money, you will not be afraid to use a credit card to get a gallon of milk or
Yeah.
to fill a tank of gas. These are things that you're just going to use your cash to then pay the credit card off with, hitting two birds with one stone.
And it's important that it's in your name. Let's
Mhm.
just say that too. Because I was like, oh, we've always had our joint credit card. But what I didn't understand is when we got divorced, that became no longer mine. And all of our history of everything that we used on the family card became no longer mine. So it's important that it's actually in your name. And I think that's what you mean when you're saying go
Yeah.
get a credit card. It's your credit card.
Yes.
You open
I
the
see
account.
this a lot in situations of financial abuse in the specific trauma certifications that I have, right?
Mhm.
And what I see a lot of the time is, and you don't really see this with women towards men, but so it does happen though, but you more often see this with men towards women. And I don't think that every man has bad intentions either. I would say
Mhm.
it's actually more rare than common. So I just want to preface this with any men listening to this. We are so grateful for the good men that you are. And there's a couple of bad apples that ruin it for the rest of us, but we see you, and we are grateful for our men that are not this way. But you will sometimes see a man who will not give they will say things to their wife like, honey, I don't want to put this pressure on you. I'm just going to put the house in my name. And some men are doing that out of good nature, and other men are doing it out of financial abuse and control. And so, if you think that you are in a situation of financial abuse and you are a woman in the United States and some other countries too, just go to the bank and apply for a credit card and get a bank account. Typically, you can go to any bank like Wells Fargo and you can just open up an account with like $20 in cash, and it will come with a debit card, a credit card, a checking account, and a savings account. And I would just say that's where to start. Do you agree that that's a really easy place to start if you have nothing?
Yeah. making sure that you have an account is important that is just yours. And I would actually do it even like at a different bank or in some way that's not connected at all. And just knowing the login to your shared bank accounts, like if your spouse won't share that with you and if you can't log in and see all of those things, that would also be a
Mhm.
problem in my mind. But
Well,
I
and
think
you
you have,
know the worst of what can happen, which is
yeah.
why you're giving such specific advice.
Yeah, I think you have to be willing to have conflict. So by nature, LLCs could be, invested. It could just be one person with one manager. I don't know if you know, but like talking with your spouse and figuring out like how do we own any assets that we do own? What is your business entity if they're an entrepreneur? And being willing to have that uncomfortable conversation that you want to be able to trust that they're not going to like punish you for that, or there's not going to be some like bad outcome. Like if I wanted the financial responsibility of seeing the bank accounts, it was like, oh, and you better also be involved in the taxes and whatever. And honestly, go to the appointments with the accountant. Like just become fully empowered in your life to where you are always aware of what's going on. I have a client right now who's fantastic. She knows all of her numbers. Like I ask her, "Hey, what are the numbers on that property? What did you buy it for? What's your interest rate? How long is the loan?" And she has these down pat, and I'm so proud of women becoming this way
Mhm.
and knowing when you get something in the mail, like what do these numbers mean? What is our HOA payment? Do we have an HOA for our property? Whatever those little specifics are, I
Mhm.
think those specifics say a lot about what your perception is of yourself and your self-concept around your view of yourself with money. And so if you're viewing yourself as irresponsible or like, oh, that's just not important to me, like it's not he's better at that than me or he knows more than me, like he'll for sure take care of it. It's okay to feel dumb or confused or whatever. Like we're willing to feel these uncomfortable emotions, just like you going and getting your G-Wagon. And you
Mhm.
were sitting there experiencing the uncomfortable emotion and willing to be told no.
Mhm.
Right? If you had had shame around what your credit score might have been, you wouldn't have been willing to ask the question. And that took a lot of courage. And I think that's the same skill that women need to have. And the first step can often be, hey, honey, like tell me about our bank accounts and how much do we have in each one? How many accounts do we have?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
getting your grip on that. Because I didn't know
Well,
we had like 36 accounts and I
lot of
literally was like,
accounts. That's a lot of
yeah,
accounts. Well, and just to be clear, this is not some like women's empowerment, like we don't need men, men are cut them out. Like that's not what this is about. And so make sure that you hear this conversation in the way it's intended. Um,
yeah,
those of you that are listening, because for me, it's about staying conscious with your
yeah,
money and
yeah.
staying conscious with your goals and your assets and your liabilities. Because eventually one day your husband will die. You may die before him. We don't know. And you want to be able to know what's going on because you might not be fortunate enough to have kids that know how to take care of everything for you. You might not be in a good situation. And so I just want to empower you with knowledge to take some ownership of your own financial health and empower yourself with knowledge and your own lines of credit, even if you don't know how you would ever use them in the future. It's just like having a GPA in school that lets other people know that you can be trusted with money. And again, what I find is that most people who are scared of credit cards don't trust themselves with money. And the way that we build trust with self around money is we use it intentionally and then pay for things intentionally, leverage debt intentionally, and then we follow through on those promises to ourselves. And one day you'll turn around and you'll be like, I can trust myself with any amount of money. I can trust myself with any investment, and it's going to help me leverage debt to create wealth down the road to do it. So, Alyssa, this was so amazing. Any final thoughts to share with those of us listening?
I think just it's beautiful thing to have your own money. Like where you can go. We've kind of had the almost like getting to a certain point discussion, but from there, then you just get to build and create. And
Hmm.
so think of it in kind of they work at the same time, but you're building your financial intelligence and your relationship with yourself around finances for a bigger purpose that then you can create this incredible life because of the knowledge and skills that you have. So, thank you so much for having me. It's been so fun to be here. And I don't know if you want me to share where people find me or any
Yeah,
of that.
please, please. Oh gosh, please.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Share where you want them to find you and how they can get in touch.
Yeah, I love it. So on Instagram, I am Alyssa Holbrook Coach, and we can link it in the show notes.
Mhm.
And then also, I offer a 1 hour consultation where we get on, we look at your overall financial situation and where you can invest in real estate and kind of what the right pathway is forward for you to see if we're a good fit to work together. So
I
this is
love
what I
it.
do. It's how I help people. And it's so fun to get here on here and connect with you about
This
it.
is like an invaluable resource to you, everybody. So, okay, Alyssa, thanks for being on the podcast today and sharing your knowledge. We're so blessed, and we'll see you all next week. Bye now.